TV.
All right, line will win music.
you for joining today's conference call with Governor Andrew Cuomo. I will now turn it over to Governor Cuomo.
Good afternoon, guys. I'm joined by Melissa DeRosa, Robert Mahica, Beth Garvey, Howard Zucker, Gareth Rhodes. Guys is a gender-neutral term. Today is day 256. Happy Veterans Day to everyone. We wish the 718,000 veterans in New York and their family a happy Veterans Day. We thank them for their service. We thank them for their sacrifice. America just would not be America without them. I'm also happy to announce today that we're opening a major expansion of the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor in Orange County. This is really an extraordinary facility, and it's going to be a great tourist destination. It's not far from where George Washington first established the badge of military merit, which was the inspiration for the modern Purple Heart. So I hope a lot of people visit it. It really is something we're very proud of. Let's talk about COVID. We have done 164,000 tests yesterday. The state rate without the microcluster zones is 2.5. The state rate with the microcluster zones is 2.9. The microcluster zone positivity is 4.9. 21 New Yorkers passed away. They're in our thoughts and prayers. 1,628 hospitalized, 304 in ICU, 135 intubated. What we're seeing is what they predicted for months, for anyone who was listening, what the scientists all predicted. We're seeing a national and global COVID surge. And New York is a ship on the COVID tide, right? Yesterday, we actually today, we've seen the country set a new record in terms of COVID cases, believe it or not. Record established on April 15th. So it is really getting much, much worse by the day. You look at the states surrounding New York on the theory that we're only a ship on the COVID tide. You have New Jersey, which is about a 5% infection rate. You have Connecticut, which is about a 7% infection rate. You have Pennsylvania, which is about a 15% infection rate. Those are the positivity rates. And you have Massachusetts. If you look at the places in our state where we're having issues, they're very often near the neighboring states, right? So we have issues in the southern tier near Pennsylvania. We have issues in Staten Island near New Jersey, Port Chester near Connecticut, etc. So if the national numbers are going up and the states around you are going up, be prepared. In New York, we follow the science. We do it more rigorously, I believe, than any state in the nation. And I believe we use more science than any state in the nation. And that's primarily the testing data. The reason we have been successful in reducing the spread in New York is we have been a step ahead of COVID. You know where it's going. Stop it before it gets there, right? And you know where it's going by following the science. You follow these numbers, you look at the line, you look at the trajectory, you know where it's going. And it is going up. And we have always been good at staying ahead of COVID. And this is the calibration that we've talked about. Increase economic activity, watch the positivity rate. Positivity rate starts to go up. Back off on the economic activity. It was never a light switch. It was never binary, economic activity or public health. It was always both. And that's my great graphic that nobody likes, of the valve and the calibration of the valve. You want economic activity to increase, you open the valve. You see the positivity rate going up, you close, back off on the valve. There is something honest and clean about the mechanics of a valve, which is non-binary. We're taking several actions today. If you look at where the cases are coming from, if you do the contact tracing, you'll see they're coming from three main areas, and we're going to act on those three areas. First is bars and restaurants. So we are going to have a requirement that statewide SLA licensed, State Liquor Authority licensed establishments close at 10 o'clock. What is a state licensed facility? It's a bar, it's a restaurant. Overwhelmingly is the majority of it. Bowling alley with a liquor license, but it's about bars and restaurants. And that's one of the main spreaders of COVID. In theory, indoor dining, outdoor dining, you're at a table, you only take down the mask to eat or drink, but what happens is that setting, it's very hard to police. It's very hard for people to maintain the discipline of sitting there, eating and drinking and chatting and having a good time and laughing and keeping a mask on. And bars and restaurants are one of the identified spreaders. So they will close at 10 o'clock. A restaurant can do curbside food only pickup after 10 o'clock, but food only pickup after 10 o'clock. Second, gyms have to close at 10 o'clock. Gyms are also an identified spreading element. So it's bars, restaurants, gyms. And then the states surrounding us have done something that I think is intelligent, and we're going to follow suit because I try to keep symmetry with the surrounding states whenever possible. New Jersey, for example, closed their bars and restaurants. I don't want to then drive their traffic to New York, right? States around us have capped parties at private residences to no more than 10 people in a residence, unless your household happens to be more than 10, and then it's your household. But Halloween parties, football parties, just let's get together and have a party. This is the third, one of the three great spreaders as identified by our contact tracing. So the states around us have done this. We're going to do it also because, again, symmetry. I don't want people in Connecticut saying, well, we can't meet at my house, so we'll go meet at your house in New York. We don't want the traffic being steered. No more than 10 in a private residence for a party. Bars, restaurants, gyms, house parties. That's where it's coming from, primarily. And those are the ones that we can address. Some specifics, Port Chester was a yellow zone. It will now go to an orange zone. It's It's right on the Connecticut border. By the way, the 7-day average for Connecticut was something like 10, which is very high. Steuben, good news, was a yellow zone. They've gotten it under control, and that is now eliminated. In Tioga, Waverly will become a yellow zone, and Staten Island will become a yellow zone. Staten Island, parts of Staten Island, and we'll have a map. Staten Islanders spend a lot of time going back and forth to New Jersey, and New Jersey has a very high rate. And I think that's part of what's driving the high rate in Staten Island, which is higher than the rate in the rest of New York City. But I think that's the proximity and the mobility with Jersey. These rules go into effect Friday at 10 p.m. Last point, you can make rules. The rules are only as good as the enforcement. Period. Local governments are in charge of enforcement. There are only two fundamental truths in this situation. It's individual discipline and it's government enforcement. Period. End of sentence. Individual discipline, how you act, COVID fatigue, I don't believe it, individual discipline, and government enforcement. I need the local governments to enforce. We went through this with bars and restaurants once before, if you remember. We put rules in place. There was widespread lack of compliance. Local governments, some did a good job, some really did not. We then had to put together a state task force to do the enforcement. This is statewide. I don't have the resources to do it, so I need the local governments to do it. I need the NYPD to do it in New York City. 150 sheriffs is not enough. It's just not enough to do all COVID safety. Airports, borders, trains, buses, bars, restaurants. So I need local enforcement to do it because the rules are only as good as the individual discipline and the government enforcement. That's where we are. We'll watch the numbers. We'll continue to adjust as the facts adjust. You see some microclusters have been relaxed. We're making good progress in other microclusters. I think you're going to see in the coming days some more microclusters relaxed. Steuben was relaxed. So we know it works, but you have to do it. Eat less, burn more calories. You will lose weight. You just have to do it. Questions?
To ask a question, you will need to press star 1 on your telephone. To withdraw your question, press the pound or hash key. Please stand by. We compile the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from the line of Marcia Kramer from CBS. Your line is open.
Governor, how are you doing today?
Marcia, I like that. It's a little different.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
Well,
hiya, Marcia.
How you doing, Andrew M?
Andrew M. That's all I go by.
Is that your handle?
That's
Andrew M.
That's right. Hashtag Andrew M. And you can guess what the M stands for.
I actually know. We've known each other a long time. But I could make one up if you prefer.
Yeah, make one up because the normal one's too boring. How are we doing?
I'm okay, Governor. So I know that you're taking action in terms of bars and restaurants. in New York City and in New York State as a whole. But there's a discrepancy between the 25% opening in New York City and the 50% in the suburbs and the areas around New York City. I wonder if the numbers keep up, would you consider drawing back and reducing the number of people who can eat indoors in the suburbs around the city as a precaution? And my second part of the question is, what are you going to do to get the New York City Police Department to help you in this effort?
I hate when you ask questions, to tell you the truth, Marcia.
Well, why is that, Governor?
Because you're too good. You're just too good at it.
We're going to make news, Governor.
Yeah, we're going to make news. Just what I want to do. It's something I've never done before. Make news. Answer to the first question is yes. These measures are appropriate at this point in time in anticipation of what we see as a potential spread. If these measures are not sufficient to slow the spread, we will we'll turn the valve more, and part of that would be reducing the number of people in indoor dining, right? You could, if that doesn't work, if these numbers keep going crazy, you have some scientists who believe we're going to go back to a close down. I'm just praying that doesn't happen. But these are all calibrations, right? Remember, the restaurants, bars at one time were at 0, and then we started to open them up. Now the positivity rate is up, and we're starting to back off. If we don't get the compliance, if the numbers don't come down, we will back off more. And remember, it's bars, restaurants, gyms, and small parties, gatherings. So bars, restaurants, that's any SLA licensee, which is primarily bars, restaurants, but they're like bowling alleys that have or some entertainment venues that have an SLA license. But bars, restaurants, gyms, and then these small parties, which are a new problem, Marcia. And it's interesting because it's psychological. You go to a party with just your friends, only 10 people. You know these people. They wouldn't hurt me. They're my friends. Yeah, I know. But they can be infected. So those are the main issues we're doing now. Remember, we've done this already upstate in our microcluster program, where we did reduce the volume. Second, how do I get NYPD to do the enforcement? Look, I understand the tensions between the community and the NYPD. I understand the tension within the NYPD. The NYPD, and there's no doubt that Mr. Floyd, Eric Garner, there's no doubt that we have to make reforms, and I think everyone would agree to that. There's no doubt we have a lot of work to do to restore trust and faith and respect from the community to the police and the police to the community. But there's also no doubt that we need the NYPD to provide public safety. We cannot get to a situation in New York City where we say, well, the NYPD is not doing their job, which is public safety. And this is part of public safety. COVID is a unique time. We have regulations and rules that we don't normally have. This is not a contentious activity, Marcia. This is saying to a bar or restaurant owner, here is a summons to close your bar because it's past 10 o'clock and you're supposed to be closed. Here's a piece of paper, It's issuing a summons. It's not dangerous activity like many police often have to do. It's not a violent situation. But I think this should be a relatively simple activity, because what's the alternative? We're going to run New York City without the NYPD? Doesn't work. Doesn't work on any level. It just doesn't work. 150 sheriffs are going to substitute for 33,000 NYPD? Doesn't work. It is an impossible situation. And I don't believe the NYPD is saying we won't do our job. I know many of them. I grew up with many of them. There are tensions, but these are truly people who do public service and sacrifice and put themselves in danger, and they've always been there for New York when New York has needed them. So, and again, this is not an especially complex or dangerous situation. A bar, restaurant should be closed at 10 o'clock. If the lights are on and people are drinking, they get a summons. That's what this is. Next question, operator.
Your next question comes from the line of Andrew Donovan from News Channel 9, Syracuse. Your line is open.
Governor, how are you this afternoon?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. We are in a yellow zone in our community, and today I'm gathering a list of schools with the requirement of increased testing. I'm wondering what resources the state is going to put forth to offer the county of Onondaga help with testing. We know that around 10,000 rapid test kits were provided. Wondering if more are on the way, because this is quite the load for schools to handle. And secondly, on bars and restaurants, many are complying. What would you say to the ones who do comply but now have this added restriction of being able to make money in most ways other than takeout after 10 o'clock?
Look, it's tough on bars and restaurants. It's tough on gyms. It's tough on everyone. It's tough on everyone. I would say we are within sight of the finish line. The vaccine has been discovered. It has to be perfected. It has to be operationalized. But we see the finish line. They say in a race, run through the tape. Just finish the race. We've had a terrible 8 months. We're in this last small lap. Let's just do what we have to do to get through it, and then we'll rebuild together. But it's been hard for everyone. And it's been hardest on those families who have lost a loved one. Losing money hurts, but money can be replaced. Losing a loved one hurts forever, right? On the testing, we will do whatever the county requires to do the testing. We will provide. And let me ask Gareth Rhodes to give you more details on that. Okay, let's do one more, operator.
Thank you. Your next question comes from a line of Liz Doran from Syracuse Standard Post. Your line is open.
Good afternoon, Governor.
Good afternoon.
Wondering if you can tell me how you've divided the lines in the school districts. It appears some school buildings are exempt from testing, but kids who live in the area would be in the district or within the yellow zone, but the building they go to would not be. Just wondering how you figure that out, how that it works out.
Well, first, none of this is perfect, right? You can't track a zone. You're trying to get the people, you're right, but you have to do it by a geographic area. Otherwise, it would be so confusing. Nobody could figure out how to administer it. But let me ask Beth Garvey to respond to your specific.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct, Governor. Because of the challenge with movement restrictions in and out of the zones, these are not movement-restricted zones. If the school building itself is in the zone, it is subject to the testing. We don't look at where students necessarily are coming from. Again, the idea is it's taking a snapshot of the positivity rate in those schools. So it's not geared towards necessarily assuming that individuals in those areas are more likely to be positive. It's to ensure that they are not.
And by the way, it's not bad news. What's the worst thing that can happen? Your child has to take a test, even though he doesn't live in the zone. Okay, so the child takes the test, you have peace of mind. And God forbid the child's sick, then we know the child's sick. More information is normally a good thing. Okay, thank you all. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's conference call. Thank you for participating.